You're watching Outnumbered on a fine Tuesday. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Republican strategist and senior fellow for the Independent Women's Voice, the very independent Lisa Boothe, syndicated radio talk show host, and a Fox News contributor and opinioner. Is that a word? Leslie Marshall.
I like it, though.
And joining us in the center seat, Fox and Friends weekend co-host Pete Hegseth with a military to civilian salute.
Absolutely.
On Outnumbered. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Also, I like
know you do.
the matching socks and tie.
Why not?
No, did you catch it?
It's
the
more than
shoelaces
that.
and the bottom of the shoe, the socks, and
It's a little
the
too
tie.
much, but
No,
we
no,
can
it's
you
not.
believe
I like it.
ladies are
No,
great.
it's perfect
What I
for
like-
a summer Tuesday.
Exactly.
What I
There
like
you
is
go.
how you color coordinated his tie with my dress.
Oh, how I like a little color wheel.
You're obviously
All right, we better move on.
You
They're
didn't
getting
even
bored.
need to with Pete. He did it on his own.
Polls showing a dead heat in that special election in Columbus, Ohio area. Republicans have been pouring in resources and Democrats pushing hard for an upset. The two candidates, Democrat Danny O'Connor, Republican Troy Balderson, casting their ballots today. President Trump endorsing Balderson and speaking at a recent rally for him. The president today tweeted, Ohio, vote today for Troy Balderson for Congress. His opponent, controlled by Nancy Pelosi, is weak on crime, the border, military vets, your Second Amendment, and will end your tax cuts. Troy will be a great congressman. President Trump, with a pretty good record on his endorsements of the Republican candidates so far this year, 20-1 to be exact. And while the president looms large over the Ohio race, today's special election is also raising some big questions about the larger picture for both political parties headed into November. So, Leslie, if you have to look like a moderate, how do you win like a socialist? Like, this might
But
be
you
one
don't.
place, but that's not going to win all over the country.
You don't.
Exactly.
Like it's been said before, and I've even said, Brooklyn, New York is not Brooklyn, Iowa. We do have a party, just like Republicans have a party, where there are different factions of the party. And the Democratic Party right now obviously is very left or socialist. And then the more moderate Democrats, like me and others, and we are
There
out
aren't
there,
many of you
Pete.
left, though, Leslie.
No, I think, but also in this race, what we're seeing some patterns. If you look at what happened in Pennsylvania's 18th and Georgia's 6th, the Democrats put forth a non-politician, a 30-something-year-old, some
but he
new
did
fresh
have some
faces.
political moves, though, because he tacked right on issues like abortion, right? So he may be, quote unquote, a non-politician on paper,
but on
some
paper,
of your party are tacking, and that's a very politically calculated move.
But obviously, because you want to win, right? I mean, when you have Republicans putting out there another 50-plus something white guy who has a lot of political background.
But is it sincere? So, Leslie, I saw you as Lisa was talking, nodding your head. Why?
That's always nice.
Because like she said, Republicans need to be concerned. Remember, this district in Ohio is not going to be the indicator of a blue wave by a victory necessarily, but also looking at a margin.
Classic
But no.
If we win, we win, and we lose, we
Melissa's going to like this. I'm going to say something.
Okay.
She's going to say I like it. Numbers, right? You like numbers, right?
Yeah.
You're good at numbers. And this comes down to numbers. I mean, there are more Republicans and more Republican money now that's coming in. Before the Democrat was up on the dollars.
Of course, they want to
and
win.
the Democrats historically have not come out, and there are just numerically more Republicans to go out and vote than there are Democrats. However, if you look at these margins and you have 23 seats, even if it doesn't bring it down to 22 in Ohio, the overwhelming majority are in my state, California. And
Okay.
I'm
Wait, does
I'm
Melissa
predicting
like it?
a
We got
tsunami
it,
in
but
my state.
all politics is local, is what I will say there.
All politics is also national.
The Iran sanctions back on as of midnight this morning. The Trump administration reimposing the first batch of economic penalties since President Trump decided to scrap the nuclear agreement back in May, calling it, quote, the worst deal ever negotiated. The president today tweeting, the Iran sanctions have officially been cast. They are the most biting sanctions ever imposed. And in November, they ratchet up to yet another level. Anyone doing business with Iran will not be doing business with the U.S. I am asking for world peace and nothing less. National Security Advisor John Bolton says the sanctions are already having an impact.
We think the sanctions that went into effect at midnight actually began to have an effect back in May when the president pulled out of the wretched Iran nuclear deal because many businesses around the world didn't want to risk losing business in the United States in order to continue to do business with Iran. So the implications are already pretty profound. They'll grow more profound in November when the oil-related sanctions kick in as well.
But House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi slamming the president, saying in a statement, quote, "Far from making us more safe, the president's latest ill-informed attempt to dismantle the successful Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action makes America and our allies less secure. This counterproductive action only diminishes America's international credibility, erodes our relationships and with our NATO and EU allies, and sets back the path towards a more stable region and peaceful non-nuclear future. But reimposing the sanctions may be already having the intended effect. Iran's president saying his country is open to negotiations with the U.S. if there is, quote, sincerity." Pete, I'll ask you first. I mean, you look at, if you say you can do business with us or you can do business with them, Europe leapt in because they wanted to do business with Iran. They saw it as a large untapped market. There was young people, they were going to buy iPhones, they were going to drink Coca-Cola, they were going to be democratized. That has not happened. None of the money got to them. And if you look at it, there is rioting in the streets. I think both, you know, if you ask anyone in the EU, you want to do business with us or them, it's also about the fact there's not a lot of business to do in Iran, as it turned out.
Economic power still matters, and these leaders in the EU may say, hey, we don't like this, we want to keep the deal, we think the deal could have worked. Trump ran on scrapping it. He scrapped it. They ultimately have to make that choice, and indications are showing that Europe's going to side with America because they understand for their own economic benefit. It makes a lot more sense to go along tacitly, even if their rhetoric's going to say America shouldn't have done this. And this just puts that much more pressure on the regime. And I know they're saying they don't want regime change. It's because they want the conversation toward denuclearization. But all of this is destabilizing, which is exactly what happened in North Korea before President Trump sat down with them to talk about a pathway. Right. Ultimately, what you have to stay focused on is Iran can't have nukes. And I know that's what John Bolton thinks and Pompeo thinks and the president thinks. This needs to be all tools toward that end state.
And even more than that, if they just don't have money to fund terror around the world, if you just cut off what they're sending to Hezbollah and everywhere else.
But they're always going to have money.
Yes.
Isn't that a good thing?
Harris is right.
They're always
and what this does, in my opinion, it fans the flames of the haters, and they're going to write bigger checks. The bottom line, again, numbers. When you look at Iran, Iran has an incredible different type of demographic than most countries. They also have a different type of regime. Rouhani is very moderate. And he's very moderate compared to those that oppose him, Pete. And what could take his place and what could replace him in the future?
People that oppose him just don't want a theocratic regime that's crushing them economically.
Let's look at the demographics of Iran, okay? The demographics of Iran are many more males than females, extremely high unemployment, very youthful population. When you have so many young men who are then angry financially because we're oppressing the people, not these leaders, they're living fine
and why are they
with our sanctions.
Protesting the leaders?
They're protesting the leaders, but if you notice what happens, the way Iran does, unlike our country, thankfully, what do? They arrest people, they use violence, they kill people, people disappear, they torture people. These people will rise up not just to get
what's the solution?
we don't punish the people for a deal that's not going to happen.
Chose not. Fox News Alert Special Counsel Robert Mueller's star witness Rick Gates is back on the stand today in the financial fraud trial of Paul Manafort. Yesterday, Gates calmly described to jurors how he and Manafort committed crimes together, concealing more than a dozen foreign bank accounts from the IRS and falsifying bank loan documents. He also confessed to embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from Manafort by filing false expense reports. Gates is expected to soon face cross-examination by Paul Manafort's defense attorneys, who are keen on damaging his credibility. All of this having, right now, so far, nothing to do with the president. Paul Manafort. A lot of information by Rick Gates. What do you make?
Trump.
So, Leslie,
unless there's a link, that's what we need to see.
Do we know enough about, because I think we don't, about how hard the FBI might have tried to let the Trump campaign know that they were looking at Paul Manafort for years and years and years? It's not like the authorities didn't already have this on the landscape, right? The authorities, so it would come from them.
Well, we know that the president was briefed before he became president after the election. And Pete, I want to say something. I want to say something to your point. This is 18 counts. This is not one count. And I understand, you have to understand Mueller's position and his job that he is tasked with is threefold. There's collusion, there's obstruction of justice, but there is Russian election interference, okay? Which this is part of the broader investigation of. So from where I sit a legal perspective, from where I sit it, it's his is he supposed to say, you know,
I feel
I'm
like
just
you're
going to
hurting
throw
your own
this
case,
away?
though.
No,
you just laid out buckets that this has nothing to do with.
Lots of indictments of things
I
that
didn't
aren't.
say that. What I say is, if you are investigating something and you find crimes along the way, do you ignore those as an independent counsel?
I think Manafort clearly has done things that are illegal, and he's probably going to be
Mueller
in
is
big
doing
time
his job
legal
and
trouble.
doing the right thing, and we should want to pay our tax dollars to have
consistently seen
justice
things that
served.
have nothing to do with Russian collusion.
Mueller
or
might
anything.
be doing the right thing, but he's
inside
not
the
doing his
courtroom
job.
from the very beginning, the judge said, we aren't going to bring up anything that has to do with collusion or any of that, so that we could concentrate on this. This isn't Manafort's only go, though, in court. Go
Well, that's
ahead.
right. Mueller might be doing the right thing by following illegality, but he's not doing his job. I mean, ultimately, that's not what we didn't send him. This could have been done by the Justice Department without a special counsel. All of these indictments
you don't know where his dots go. You don't see
here we
his
are,
playbook.
2 years later.
No, you don't
and we
see
don't
his
have.
playbook.
Oh, his playbook is on the front page of the New York Times when it needs to be. And if they had anything right now, you better believe it'd be A1 for 2 weeks
But
straight.
see, I think maybe a Fox News alert. Lots of focus on Ohio's special election today, but there is another big test of President Trump's influence. In Kansas, President Trump bucking the GOP establishment, endorsing firebrand Secretary of State Kris Kobach in his gubernatorial primary against the more moderate incumbent governor, Jeff Colyer. Kobach is known for his tough stance on immigration and support of voter ID laws. President Trump tweeting yesterday, Kris Kobach is a strong and early supporter of mine, is running for governor of the great state of Kansas. He is a fantastic guy who loves his state and our country. He will be a great governor and has my full and total endorsement. Strong on crime, border, and military. Vote Tuesday. But Republican leaders reportedly warned the president that Kobach is unpopular with the general electorate in Kansas and that if he becomes governor, it could energize Democrats in the state's congressional races. Kobach pushing back on that today.
And we hear time and time again, go with the moderate, go with the moderate. Stop it.
Yeah.
Probably
That
doesn't matter
Honestly, I
when
would
the
ask you-
president tweets you. It's good.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, there was frustration in the past when presidents didn't get out there and didn't go and support and didn't spend their time working hard for these other candidates, given how much they had on their plate. Does it surprise you that the president is out there putting so much into it?
No, because I think he's looking at numbers and he's hearing from his party. He knows what happens historically, even though this is not a typical
But all
president
presidents know that.
and presidency. But this is different because there is the possibility of a lot of seats and maybe one or both chambers being flipped. And he's out there. And I got to tell you, don't faint. I want Kobach to win. I want the president to have him win. He's more controversial than the incumbent. It makes it easier for a Democrat in the general. I think some Republicans would stay home. There's 3 alleged white supremacists that have worked for him, and everybody's like, what was up with this voter fraud commission that seemed to be kind of fraudulent itself? So I want him to win because I think it would be easier for a Democrat in the general in a very red district.
But I think for President Trump, there is that loyalty aspect because Kobach was an early supporter of President Trump. So, I think President Trump has demonstrated that he's loyal to many of those people that were with him and have been with him.
Yeah, he's remaking this party in his image. This is a guy who's been behind him, and I just don't buy it. I mean, I feel like when Republican grassroots are energized, they come out and vote, and Kris Kobach does that. A moderate governor who is kind of just it doesn't get the base out the way you need in
Alabama,
2018.
Roy Moore.
Well,
that's
Fox News alert. We are awaiting President Trump's legal team's response to Robert Mueller. We expect to get it in the form of a letter. It will set terms for an interview with a special counsel and likely reject any in-person questions about obstruction of justice. The president's legal team says they will consider some questions of obstruction in writing only. They also want questioning limited to events before the inauguration.
I believe that.
I think the president wants to, like many people think when they sit down with a counsel and a prosecutor, they think that they can outsmart them, or they can convince them, or they can show how they're wrong.
Well, they're innocent and they want the ability to clear their name.
I think whether a person, I'm not saying whether he's innocent or guilty here. I'm saying
that could be a motivation.
that if I were advising him, if I were Giuliani, I would not let him have this one-on-one because he
thinks it's a good idea.
I don't think it's a good idea. I think he's going to open up a can of worms that aren't even there for him, perhaps. The situation much worse for him.
But you also look at something like Michael Flynn, who told congressional investigators that the FBI agents didn't think that he lied, and then as soon as Mueller takes over, he pleads to, one count of perjury, essentially. So I think there's concern that maybe they just try to find something, period, as Judge Ellis said in the Manafort case, that basically Mueller is gunning for impeachment or prosecution. And what I think is interesting is there seems to be a focus on the obstruction of justice aspect of this, because I think that's really the only level of vulnerability. Marco Rubio said on Fox News on Sunday, makes sense, right? That basically, if there's any evidence of collusion, it would have surfaced by now, right? And there was reports recently that Mueller was potentially looking at the tweets, which to me seems like they're kind of grasping at straws to try to find anything.
We don't know what he has.
And James Comey, that's what it seems to me. And then 2.5
And the ball
years
is moving on how
is
social
sort of an
media
irrelevant
plays a
witness
role
at this point.
anyway. I mean, we're inundated daily with how the ball is moving on social media. So, I mean, we don't know what he has. We don't know what he's looking for.
I think it seems like he's
I can't think of anything I've done, and I don't want to sit down with a special prosecutor. So that's all I can say. I don't know who wants to do that.
You and I rarely agree. High five from over here on that.
The president.
Like a good show. All right. Well, Hollywood is not letting up in its ongoing attacks on President Trump. West Hollywood City Council voting unanimously to ask the president's Walk of Fame star, which has been the target of repeated vandalism, to be removed. While the vote is largely just symbolic, the city's mayor says the president is not deserving of the honor, telling CNN the West Hollywood City Council did not pass the resolution because Donald Trump is a conservative or a Republican. Earning a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame is an honor. When one belittles and attacks minorities, immigrants, Muslims, people with disabilities, or women, the honor no longer exists. Meantime, on the East Coast, longtime Trump nemesis Rosie O'Donnell leading a group of Broadway performers in a musical protest last night, right in front of the White House. Cast members from Hamilton, Wicked, and Les Mis singing show tune favorites as part of an ongoing anti-Trump demonstration, which is now in its 23rd day. Take a listen.
Will you join in our crusade? Who will be strong and stand with me? Somewhere beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see?
And Rosie took this jab at the president.
And we're going to keep coming back until he's out. Let the president know in no uncertain terms that we are alive, awake, and we are woke. We are not going away. Good silent people are the wind behind evil.
I think it's safe to say Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump have a history. But Leslie, you had told me that your response to this would surprise me.
Okay. All right. Are you listening? Rosie, my fellow Democrats, we are woke. We march, we protest, we sing, and I'm not going to do that today, although I did consider it to say this. You have to vote. If they don't vote, it doesn't matter. Historically, Democrats do not show up in the midterms. They keep saying that they want Trump to be a one-term president, that they want to vote them out, hashtag vote them out, blue wave, blue tsunami. None of that happens because as great as we are at marching and protesting, we're not as great voting. We saw this happen in the general election. 2016, hundreds of thousands of people in this country marched the day after the election, and my man on the street, man on the street for my radio show went out there and interviewed and said, who did you vote for? Do you know what they said? Oh, well, I didn't vote. I stayed home. Or I thought Hillary had it in the bag. You can't do that. You have to get out and vote.
I'm moderately
surprised. So the singing is lovely, lovely and entertaining, but it's not effective.
Well, so you know a thing or two.